Welcome to the second leg of the Grand Chess Tour, uh, the Paris Rapid and Blitz tournament that is currently being held in Paris. This is going to be running on from the 16th to the 22nd of June 2021, and it's attracted a good number of elite grandmasters, 10 of them, as I mentioned in my earlier video, and this was a second round game between Ian Nepomniachtchi and Etienne Bacrot. Etienne Bacrot is from France. Ian Nepomniachtchi is the number one grandmaster from Russia. He's also the winner of the candidates, and he will be taking on Magnus Carlsen in the World Chess Championship. Uh, just so you know, for whatever reason, Ian Nepomniachtchi. So I guess as a preparation for that, World Chess Championship for Ian Nepomniachtchi, he uses these as warm-ups, build-ups to that, and testing out a few of his lines. And I would think this was another game, one of those games that he had to face Etienne Bacrot. So Ian with the white pieces started with e4, and Etienne thought was imperative for him to play the Sicilian defense, so he played c5, knight f3, d6 by Etienne, bishop b5. Now this almost gets into the Moscow variation. We sometimes people used Kor or Solim or something, but it's refuted by Etienne with his next move, and he plays bishop d7, which is now forcing it into the Canal attack main line, versing the Sicilian defense. We had bishop capturing on d7, queen recaptures on d7, and Ian castles the king side. Knight f6, and Nepo plays rook e1. We had knight c6, c3 to try and strengthen the center. We have this pawn coming, to d4 anytime from now. We had e6, preparing to stop d5 when d4 is played. So d4 is on the board. C captures d4, c captures d4. Then we had d5 before Etienne could, castle. This d5 move is always a good move for black in Sicilian. Yeah, you push d5 when you can and when it's too early. So Nepo closed the center by playing e5. We had knight e4, knight b to d2, and then knight captures on d2, bishop recaptures on d2. We had f5, rook c1, f4. Then we had a3 to stop that pawn that is, the a pawn that's running down the file. We had bishop e7. Now, not so many games have been played up this position. At least by the time they got here, we had Lastin Alexander versing Kreak Kivane Dimitri, and that was in 2006. That game ended in a draw. So we had h4 by Nepo. Black castles, and it's as of this move 15, that's an entirely new game. That was the novelty of the game. Castling by Etienne was a novelty of sorts in the game. We had rook c3, rook f to c8, rook d3. Now what this move does is it releases this knight from the protection of this pawn. Now this knight can be able to move. Before, he was protecting this piece, this pawn on d4, but right now it can be able to swing in and play to g5, and if it's evicted, perhaps it can come back so it can be able to centralize. That is the essence of the move. So the game continued. We had b5, and we then had knight g5, h6 to evict the knight, knight back to h3, draws back to h3. The knight draws back to h3. We had king h8 to move out of the g file, and now Nepo played what seemed to be a mistake. Played queen g4. That squandered his advantage, the little advantage that he had built up in the opening. But sometimes GM just play these sidelines just so they can get you out of opening theory. For one to blunder, best would have been, let's take it back, queen h5 straight away would have been the move, because ideally the queen would even end up on that square anyway. But he decided that he should play queen g4, and perhaps then the bishop would be played to f8 to try and put a battery onto this diagonal, you know, and protecting all these pawns. But that was never played. On the board, queen g4 was played, which was a mistake. But it's so funny that Etienne replied with a blunder, and he did play f5. That was a blunder. Bishop f8 should have been the best move in this position. Like I said before, bishop f8, puts protection onto all these pawns. It does look at the g7 pawn and protect the h6 pawn as well. Well, that wasn't played. And so after playing f5, we had Nepo play queen g6. And this is a bait. You are gambiting a pawn, and Etienne, with two hands, took this up. He decided that he would pick this h-pawn. Now, this bishop picking the h-pawn is a mistake, but the pawn has been gambited. So for whatever reason, after this move was played, that's when I would think the best move in this position, let's take it back. The best move in this position should have been still bishop f8. Yeah, then perhaps you would have a knight f4 as planned, because this knight came from here to here, came from here to here to here and to here. It will end up here perhaps. Try and put pressure on that pawn, but that was never played anyway. So what happens is he picked the pawn on h4, and then queen h5 was played, which could have been played in the earlier moves, but he was being held back until this rightful moment. He had played bishop d8, which is an inaccuracy. The best move in that position should have been queen e7 to try and protect that bishop, and perhaps the game would continue. Yes, in as much as Nepo has a very big advantage, about a 5-point lead, good enough to win the game, but it's playable at this point. Then you would have maybe g6, g3 to evict the bishop. The bishop doesn't have to leave. We have b4, g captures on h4, queen e8, queen captures e8, rook recaptures on e8, a captures on b4. We have rook e to b8, rook c1, rook s6. You look at a shuffle of the rooks around the board. Knight f4, knight captures on b4, rook a3, and perhaps the game would continue in as much as it's in lost position. But what happens is bishop d8 was played, and it's in this position that Nepo sacrificed a bishop on h6. He captured the pawn on h6, which is a sack. So he sacked on h6. So G recaptured on h6, and this is when he played a very good move. He played rook g3, and it's in this position that Etienne resigned. If you want to see what would happen before this, if the game would continue, the best move would be perhaps bishop g5. But here, we would have this being picked up, and just in case you play uh, queen g7, then this would fall into a check, a discovered check, which would lose the queen immediately, and perhaps this pawn as well. So you don't want to be playing this anyway. Let's look at another line. So let's look at this line right here. After knight capturing on g5, when you play bishop g5, knight captures on g5, and perhaps you might want to try and play rook f8, but this also loses, as here it's a mate in 4. What happens is you will have queen capturing on h6, and then you would have the king moving away, and then knight captures on e6 with a discovery check from the rook, the rook on g3. This can only be parried by a king moving to f7, and this would straight away fall into the queen check on f6, which forces the king to e8, and queen capturing on f8 would be checkmate. So it's by move 24. It's by move 24 that Etienne resigned. Soon as Ian Nepomniachtchi played rook g3, Etienne resigned and Nepo won that game. Thank you for watching this video, and I will be going through the other games for the next round, round 3, that was played on the same day, day 1 of this Rapid and Blitz tournament, Paris tournament, being held as the second leg of the Grand Chess Tour. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe to my channel for more videos in this tour. See you in the next video.